Hello there and welcome to the Card Grotto. Today I've got a cool technique to share with you that I learned from my amazing Altenew teamie Erum Tasneem. This is reverse embossing. So let's get started. I'm using the Altenew Whimsy Motif 3D embossing folder today. I have cut a tag using the Altenew Terrific Tags die set from Nina £110 Solar White cardstock. I'm taking the embossing folder and turning it the other way, so the reverse of the embossing, and this is the debossed side. So I'm taking my tag, placing it inside where I want the debossing to end up. I am creating a tag today, but this technique works really well for cards too. I'm running that through my die cutting machine, and on the back of the tag is going to be the embossed side, so the raised areas, which is what I usually use, and on the front of the tag is going to be the debossed side, or the kind of indented side, and that's the side that I'm going to be using today. I'm popping it down onto a sticky mat. That's just going to hold it in place so that I can add some ink blending on top. I'm taking the Altenew Sweet Dreams Fresh Dye Ink collection. I absolutely love these aqua tones. I wanted the flower to be aqua, but I also wanted the leaves to have some aqua tones on them as well. So I'm going to go over the whole entire area to start with the lightest shade of these inks using a small blending brush. And it's going to look really messy as I add these inks, but don't worry, when I add the last layer of inks, it's going to completely transform it. I'm then going in with Aqualicious, and I'm adding that colour mainly towards the leaves and also the base of the flower. And then for the two darkest colours of ink, I'm going to add those, focusing the colour towards the base of the flower and also the base of the leaves. And for that, I'm going to use a mini blending brush. So ordinarily, I don't really like to share someone else's technique, especially if it's not one that's kind of really sort of prevalent in the card making world, which I don't think this is, but I absolutely love it. And I just think it's such a fun technique. It is a little bit scary, I will say, and you'll see that in a little while. But I did ask Erum's permission if she was happy for me to share it, and really kindly she was. The end result of both of our techniques is the same, so the technique is hers, but I have changed it up slightly, so my method is slightly different, and that's kind of why I wanted to share it as well, because what works for one person might not work for another person, but the end result is the same. I am going to share Erum's video at the end of this one, so that you can hopefully watch that and see the difference between the two, because like I say, one might work for one person and one might work for a different person. So I'm adding some green onto these leaves using the Altenew Green Valley Crisp dye ink collection, and I'm just using the two lightest shades, and I'm focusing this colour towards the tips of the leaves. So like I said, this looks really messy, but I am going to add some black ink over the top. So I'm taking Altenew Obsidian Pigment ink. I'm taking a really deep breath here, and then I'm going to go direct to paper with this ink pad. I'm going to swipe it over the top, and anywhere that there is raised areas, the ink is going to cover. Anywhere that it's debossed, so the flower and the leaves, the ink isn't going to go over them, but it is going to go over them slightly. Because the embossing folder is 3D, you get some areas that are slightly higher, some that are sort of middle, and some that are lower. So the really great thing is, once you add that ink over the top, it really brings out those flowers and the leaves. I just think it's so pretty. I'm using black, but you can use any dark colour that's going to cover that kind of like initial ink blending. I just think it's so pretty. It kind of pops out, and yeah, I absolutely love it. Erum did add the ink blending with an ink blending tool, that black ink, and that is a little bit less scary. So I wanted to show like a different way. So I wanted to also show that depending on how much pressure you add on the ink pad, will depend on the end result. So all of these are slightly different, as you can see, depending on how much pressure I have added. Some of them you can see the definition of the flower a little bit better than other ones. So it did take me a little while to kind of get used to what I personally liked. Now I'm going to stamp a sentiment. This is the Altenew Sincere Sentiment set. I'm taking a piece of black cardstock, prepping that with an anti-static powder tool, removing the excess powder, and then I can take the High Friend sentiment from the Sincere Sentiment set. I can take that off of the stamp set and pop that down onto the black cardstock. I can then take the top flip plate of the stamp wheel, pop that on top, and that's going to pick up that stamp. I can then flip that over and then ink up that stamp using embossing ink. This is a clear sticky ink so that when I add the embossing powder on top, it's going to stick to it. So just inking that stamp up really well. And then I can flip over that flip plate and then pop that down, and that's going to stamp the sentiment onto the black cardstock. I can then add some white embossing powder, and I do like to add the embossing powder a few times and tap off the excess in between. That just makes sure that I'm going to get really nice coverage of that powder. I'm then going to heat set that powder with a heat tool. So I'm just going over the areas. I do like to heat set from the front and the back. That just helps to prevent any overheating of that powder. I did set that aside to cool for a little while, and then taking a cloth and just removing any of that excess anti-static powder. Because my tag now looks like it is black from the front, I do want to kind of cover over that white core of the cardstock. So I'm taking a brush tip pen here in black, and I'm just going around the edges of that tag. I'm not going around the areas where the kind of image sort of overhangs the side of the tag, because I didn't want you to kind of like see black on the edge of the leaves or something, but where the areas that are black, I want to cover over that white core of the tag. I just think it looks a little bit neater. Just remembering that hole there in the top. I've then cut another tag from some black cardstock, and I'm going to adhere this onto the back of the other tag. The other tag, or the back of the other tag where I've got the image on, is the embossed side, so the raised area. So I want to make sure that I add a lot of adhesive onto this tag so that it's going to stick really well to that side. So I can just sandwich those two tags together. That's just going to give me a nice neat area to write a personal message with a white gel pen if I want to. I can then add some twine through the top of the tag. So just securing that in place at the front, and then I can tie that in a bow. Just fiddling with that bow for a little while, trying to get it the size that I want. And then once I'm happy with the size, I can grab some scissors and I can just cut those tails down. I have cut the sentiment into a strip, and I'm going to add some foam tape onto the back of that. So I'm just cutting that foam tape down, and because this foam tape is white, I didn't really want you to be able to see too much of the foam tape. Sort of like if you're peeking from the side of the tag, that white foam tape is going to really stand out. So I'm taking that brush pen again, and I'm just going to go around the outside edges of that foam tape. It's not going to cover it completely. If I went over this in a few layers, it would get a lot darker in colour, but it is just going to make it so that it doesn't sort of stand out too much. I am getting a lot on my fingers, but thankfully it did wash off really easily. So this is quite a good technique if you don't have any black foam tape. So just popping that on the back of the sentiment strip, I can remove the backings off of that foam tape, and then I can pop that down onto the tag. So just using some tweezers there just to help me out with the placement of that sentiment. And that is the tag finished for today. I really love this technique. A big thank you goes to Erum for allowing me to share it with you today. I just think it's so cool how that flower just really pops out from that kind of black ink on the outside edges. Links to the products that I used will be listed in the description bar on YouTube and also over on my blog. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.